All right, here we are. It's the Do Big Things podcast, and my guest today, Will Benitez, nutritionist, and I've got all kinds of questions for him. And by the way, man, I think you have the coolest hair of anyone that's been on the podcast.
I
it's
appreciate that. I don't know what that list looks like, but I'll take it.
it's kind of afro-ish, but way cooler, man. I bet you a lot of people are jealous of that hair.
Yeah, I've gotten that quite a lot. And with COVID, I really let it go. I usually kind of keep it a lot shorter, but
Yeah.
like with many people, I was like, well, the hairstylists and barbers and all that kind of stuff shut down in the
Yep.
beginning. So I was like, already had to go months without one. And then I was like, I'm kind of loving it. Let's just keep it
Nah,
going. Why
yeah,
not?
just rock it out. Looks good, man.
Exactly. I can't do what you're doing, Adam. So
Yeah, I
I
know.
mean, I really can't. Like it's the follicles aren't there. So it all shows up here instead.
I got the beard, you got the hair. So between the two of us, we're good to go.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, cool, man. Well, thanks for joining me. And if you wouldn't mind, just give us a little intro. Tell us who you are, maybe a little background, and how you got into nutrition.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So again, thanks for the introduction. My name is Will Benitez, and I am a nutritionist based here in Portland, Oregon. But even before COVID, I pretty much work almost entirely remotely. Have a lot of clients all around the country, and also international clients as well. And do a lot of performance-based nutrition. So I work with a lot of athletes and not even so much athletes, people just that either do or want to live just that active lifestyle, and I love it. Right, I'm here for it. Weekend warriors to people who just walk their dog, but they just
Mm.
want to kind of breathe easier while doing it, or just feel better, day to day. And I love supporting people like that, who have that kind of drive and value nutrition in that way. But a little bit of background on me. So originally from New Jersey, I mentioned here in Portland. My wife and I have been here now for 6 years, actually this month. But we're both from New Jersey. That's where we met back in college. And I was actually a teacher before this. So my first
Mm.
route of education was in education. I got
Mm.
my master's degree in education at a state school, Rutgers University, out in New Jersey, and taught for not that long. I was at a school that just wasn't for me, and at the same time, actually, my wife got into medical school here in Portland, which
Mm.
is what led us here.
Got it.
And I was all too eager to get the heck out of New Jersey and get the heck out of that job. It was my first year teaching, and again, I love teaching, but the school and the all the background stuff wasn't for me. And so yeah, I was too eager to say, you know what, let's get out of here. I think we showed up 9 months before she was getting started with her program, because I just really wanted to get here and have a change of pace and a change of scenery and all of that. And so actually that is what led me to nutrition. I mean, I'd always been interested in it. Um, you know, did I do it right? Am I doing it right now? Who the heck knows, right? But I even in high school, like I know I definitely, looking back, did plenty of things wrong, and I wish I hadn't, because who knows where I would be now if I kind of did everything right. Um, but I still kind of like thought about it, right, and thought like, oh, this is the right thing to do. Like I at least knew that there was something to food.
Mm.
And then in college, me and my wife, she was a collegiate diver, so athletics was a big thing for her. And I ran recreationally. I joined the club team, and played soccer with buddies and stuff like that. So I was pretty active. And both of us just kind of together felt like we wanted to get healthier. I also come from a family that's kind of got a lot of health issues just throughout, like just everywhere. And so I think that played a part in like me just paying more attention to food, and how I treat my body through food, and kind of use it more as nourishment versus just pleasure, that kind of thing. And yeah, so when we finally came out here, again, wanting that change of pace in my career, in my life, um, I sought out, a change in career at the same time. I substitute taught for a little bit. Again, I was in education, so I did that just to kind of get by and get us settled here in Portland. Um, but I learned that there was a master's degree program in nutrition that with just a couple extra classes I became eligible for, and went that route. Got my master's degree in an accelerated program here in Portland at a medical university, and started my own business. And fast forward, here we are. I mean, this was probably 4.5, 5 years ago or so. And yeah, it's been an exciting ride.
Wow. What kind of issues was your family having? Was it like sickness, or were you able to help them at all with your nutrition, or what did that look like?
Yeah, so if my family's gonna tune in here, I'm gonna hear it later. But it's all of that, right? Like, it was a lot of sickness, a lot of just lifestyle stuff, things that I would call more or less preventable with changes in diet and lifestyle. But that's just kind of how it was for some of those who have passed away, and how it is for some of those who are currently kind of dealing with it, and that's their life. But I know, that nutrition can and does certainly play a role in a lot of that. I mean, I think, again, that was probably part of the impetus behind, getting into nutrition. I think personally, a lot of it was about athletics and like being my healthiest, fastest self for my sports performances and things like that. But I do think under all of that was this drive that I know food hasn't been done right in my, like, outside of my nuclear family. And there's something to that from a health and like wellness standpoint. And so that does drive, a lot of what I do now, and a lot of how I view nutrition as medicine and things like that. But to your point about have I been able to help them, I will say that my wife and I have greatly influenced my immediate family, and hers as well, just because that's in our sphere of influence mostly. Um, but we do all we can to simultaneously be the best help we can and resource we can for them, while at the same time, over the years, realizing it's hard to help family. It really is. It's hard to. I think we're just 1 degree too close. You know what I mean? Like, we both care so much, and therefore get frustrated so much when things aren't being listened to, or we have to repeat ourselves a 10th time, or we see something in the refrigerator and we're like, we talked about this. What's going on? This isn't right for you. And it's hard. Again, we're just that 1 degree closer. Where if it was a patient or a client, it's different. Like, you don't have that frustration there. You can approach those conversations and handle those differently. But with family, the walls are down a little bit, so you can kind of have a different conversation with them. So it's tough. And it all comes out of love, and I realize that, and they know that too. But it does make it harder to kind of treat them or heal them, in that way. The best we can do, I think, and what we've done and seen over so many years, my wife and I being together, and kind of being this model for them, is just that. It's just like, live it. You know what I mean? Be that model, and have our families just see what we're able to do, and by like valuing nutrition and valuing how we take care of ourselves, and being super active. And I mean, super active isn't, I'm an ultra runner. It's not like everyone has to do that, but we hike and we walk our dog, and we just move our bodies on a daily basis. And when we don't, we really don't feel good. And we just kind of live that, and hopefully, our family members see it and just do a little bit more, every day or something like that. Just that's the approach we kind of have settled on over the years. But in the beginning, you want to heal everything, and you want to heal everyone. And some people just can't. That's how it is.
Yeah, you're right. It's so weird how people, they'll listen to some video, a random video online, but when it comes to their family members or someone they know, they're like, I know that guy. Like, how can they be right? It's so strange.
Yep, totally.
What
Yeah.
what sort of mistakes did you make on your journey? You mentioned that you had made mistakes, in your nutrition, just kind of when you were sort of getting your bearings. What sort of mistakes were those?
Oh, I mean, that list can go on and on. I think when I mentioned that, I was thinking, like, back in high school, early college, where you think like you do then, you're doing everything right.
Mhm.
Um, and like I said, I did kind of pay attention to food to some degree, but looking back, it's like, I know I was drinking way too much coffee
Mm.
Because I did drink coffee. Probably started drinking coffee in like late middle school.
Mm.
But I know I was drinking way too much coffee. I mean, especially more in college, as is probably the case with most people. Um, but and on top of that, not drinking enough water, right? So I know I had this like perfect recipe for like being just chronically dehydrated and yet asking my body to like be the healthiest it can be. And it's like, that's not gonna happen. So I know that was a huge piece. On the food side, just like rationalizing, um, even like eating out, for example, like takeout and stuff, like, oh, but I'm getting like the healthier foods, and then, oh, like this is protein. It's like, this is totally fine. Like all the top athletes eat it. It's like, yeah, but they're cooking it, or their chefs are cooking it or something like that. And here I am eating it from like a greasy joint or something like that. Like it's just not the same. But you either don't know that or you rationalize it. And looking back, it's like, yeah, I probably rationalized my way out of a lot of things and justified it to some extent. While looking back in 2020, it's like, and I don't mean the year, just 2020 vision, hindsight. It's yeah, a lot of those things, if had I known, right, or had someone guided me, or probably would have made different choices, and my body would have been healthier for it. And when I was running high school, college, dealt with a lot of like muscle cramping issues. Like oh my gosh, if I knew what I knew now, I would, hydration, magnesium, like pay attention to my electrolytes, like what's causing all of this. I just didn't ask those questions. I just thought, oh, I'm running too fast, I got to slow down. Or I didn't like really think to investigate and figure out like, oh, there's something causing this, and there's something I can change or do to address it. And that's, you just learn as you go along. But those are some of the things that I had to have happened for me to figure out and pay attention, right? It's like when you fail, you learn a lot from that. And I think that I definitely benefited from failing, if you will, in those areas, because it led me to pay more attention. It led me to kind of go this route. So
Totally.
I'm okay with it.
Yep.
If that's the case.
It's a journey, man. And sometimes you got to go the wrong way to figure out you're going the wrong way. And
exactly.
that's unfortunately how I learn, man. So I totally got you there.
Yep.
You mentioned coffee. So I'm going to start hitting you with all kinds of questions that you've probably heard like a million times from all kinds of clients. But what are your thoughts on coffee? Do you drink it? Is one cup okay? How do you feel?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I drink it. I'll answer that off the bat. I love coffee. My wife
So
and
do
I,
I.
actually, my wife wasn't a coffee drinker until we started dating. She was she's Russian American, and so tea is very much like it is in most of the world, very much the go-to drink. And so she was a tea drinker. So she got me drinking tea, and then I got her drinking coffee. And so we both start our day with coffee, end our days with tea. It's like almost ritualistic at this point. But yeah, I have, probably at least 2 cups a day, to
Okay.
be completely transparent. And I think that's fine. Here's the thing with coffee is the issue with it, because it's kind of like most foods, right? Like with you've got like the longest like arguments with food in like nutrition science, the lifetime of nutrition science, which isn't that long compared to other sciences. It's like, what about coffee? What about eggs? What about sugar and fat? Like which one's the devil here? So you have all these like really, really long-term discussions that have been part of the field for so long. Like I said, coffee's in there. I think the issue with coffee is mostly because there's a lot of health benefits with coffee, but I think with it is mostly the dehydrating factor, and the fact that exactly, right, but it's only a diuretic after so much of it, right? So what science is telling us is that probably around like 500 milligrams of caffeine is when it starts to become a diuretic. So that's probably 2 strong cups of coffee.
Okay.
I mean, like, mugs, right? Because what's a cup of coffee? Like that kind of varies for people. But I don't know, 20 ounces of coffee or something like that. And again, stronger coffee. Yeah, but before that, right, then it's not really an issue. And on top of that, if your hydration's up to par, meaning that if you're getting enough water, you're eating an abundance of like plant foods, it's also really, hydrating kind of foods. You're drinking your teas, you're paying attention to your electrolytes, like you're feeling good in all those other areas of hydration, because it's not just water. then, maybe you can afford a little bit extra coffee if you got a meeting and you're drinking coffee, or, you know, you're finishing your partner's coffee or something like that, right? Like if you're getting above that 500 milligrams, I usually tell people that can be okay if the other stuff is making up for it.
Mm.
If the other stuff isn't there, kind of like what I was talking about when I was younger, and you're not drinking enough water, and on top of that, you're drinking way too much coffee, then yeah, that can become, problematic in terms of hydration and actually dehydrating you.
Yeah.
So yeah, you have that diuretic piece, which is totally important. I think that's, at least for the clients I typically work with, that's like one of the number one things. Obviously, talking about athletes, you want to make sure you're not dehydrated. But the other part to it, I mean, I guess there's two other things to it. One of them is, this addictive component, right? So when we talk about like lifestyle, a lot of people do feel a lot better when they just kind of like get rid of all stimulants in their life, right? You hear a lot about, whether it's podcasts or just things you read, people just saying completely no to alcohol, completely no to coffee, anything that's kind of stimulating, or stimulate like a food stimulant or something that's not natural, that they can get from like experiences, for example. And they just feel better off of that. And that's totally fine. Like you said before, like it's a journey, and that's people's journeys. And if they want to do that and they feel good off it, great. I don't think, coffee is one of those things that people need to live a healthy life. So there's that part, right? There is this like, yeah, caffeine can be addicting, and, without it, you might get some headaches. And it's like, do you want that to be part of your life? Or do you want to just keep it in and have a healthy relationship with it and it be totally fine, and make sure you're hydrated and taking care of yourself in many other ways? Great, right? Because as I said, there's plenty of healthy benefits to it as well. But the other thing I tend to think about when it comes to coffee, particularly too much coffee intake, is that it's also an appetite suppressant. And so sometimes, people, and you haven't like kind of reflected on this, you can think about it in your own kind of experience, where you might be like super busy, or you might be hungry, but you've got a fresh brew and you don't have time to make something, so you're just gonna like pour that cup of coffee and just drink it. Or you're at work and things are busy, so you're just gonna grab a cup of black coffee and just deal with that. You can go a long ways drinking coffee and not eating, because it kind of suppresses that appetite and allows you to get by a little bit longer. It's the stereotypical like Hollywood kind of images, like smoking a cigarette and drinking coffee, and then like not eating for a really long time, or like getting by on like a really strict budget, or like having no money, and like, but you got smokes and you got a and you have your cup of coffee, and you're good to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, because those two things are suppressing the appetite, and your body will say, okay, I don't need to eat right now, or at least chemically it doesn't think it needs to eat, because you're just suppressing those hormonal cues that are happening. So that's one thing I think about when it comes to excessive coffee intake is, okay, if you're doing that, are you also not eating enough because of that? Or at the very least, make sure you're eating sufficiently, and like I said also before, hydrating sufficiently. Otherwise, I think coffee can be completely fine. The old adage for almost everything, in moderation. If you're someone who like feels like they need 3 or more cups a day, and that's been like your kind of life for a long time, there might be something there, right? I mean, the coffee is almost like a band-aid in that case. And it's like, well, how can we best support the body to handle the amount of stress that you're using the coffee to kind of get through, right? How can we change up your nutrition to supply you stable energy throughout the day, instead of relying on coffee to kind of give you the jump or spike you need when things come low? So that's what I like to do with people, have them have healthy relationships with coffee or what have you, while doing the things that they're striving for with the coffee, especially in the excessive situations, through their nutrition and through their lifestyle stuff.
Yeah. And sleep,
I'm
right?
someone who, and sleep, absolutely, yeah, because that's part of the whole energy. And I mentioned hormonal cues. If you're not sleeping well, all that's thrown off.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Sleep is essential for all of that.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to get a little bit more myopic. Do you just drink black coffee, or, so what I do in the morning, and you tell me your thoughts on this, is, I've been doing the intermittent fasting thing, and,
Okay.
nothing crazy, like 10-14. So like 14 off, and then I'll eat for like a 10-hour window. And in the morning, I'll drink a bulletproof coffee. So, I'm putting the coconut oil or MCT oil, grass-fed butter, and collagen in my coffee, and blending it up, and I'll have 1.5 of those in the morning. What are your thoughts on something like that?
Yeah, I think that can be totally fine. I'd be curious how you're feeling on it, because when I think of like bulletproof coffee, for example, and the coconut oil, um, that really took off, kind of getting like the fat metabolism going, and giving you this like nice energy, like slow energy, feeling throughout the morning, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of athletes took to it because MCTs or coconut oil, a really high source of medium chain triglyceride or medium chain fats, and that can be really nice for this like energy boost that you might want before your morning run, for example. And
Mhm.
so it really took off, bulletproof coffee in the athletic industry for that reason, because it's a really nice fuel. Essentially, I think coconut oil is right there. MCTs kind of became really popular at the same time bulletproof coffee became popular. I don't know which came first, but I think it was around the same time both of those kind of took off. Um, uh, so yeah, I'm here for it if you're feeling good with it. That's the thing. I think there's nothing wrong with that picture. Just a matter of same thing, the same considerations I mentioned before. It's like, is it allowing you to still have your normal breakfast, and are you feeling good on your runs with that if you're using it, before a run or before a training session. But otherwise, it's a really good way to get in some good fats, and if you're enjoying your coffee at the same time, I think that's great.
Yeah. How important is breakfast? There's people in different camps, obviously.
Yep.
What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely people in different camps. I think breakfast is wholly important.
Okay.
Like very important. And here's why. Um what I've seen, I'm just going to speak kind of pragmatically. What I've seen through just my work with clients is that when that meal is skipped, there's two things happening. There's the body trying to compensate, or the individual trying to compensate, and getting too much in terms of like too much volume or too much just food
Mhm.
in the other meals, right, in the subsequent meals,
Mhm.
whether that's lunch or maybe there's an extra large snack in there, extra large dinner. And it's hard to suss out, like, is the body trying to compensate, or is the person trying to compensate mentally, like they're purposely doing this. um Either way, though, what that is it's often just too much per sitting, right? By having these like extra large meals, it's just too much on the digestive system. It's too much to properly absorb all of that. Um, Potentially, you run the risk of a lot of that just going right to fat storage, and a lot of people don't necessarily want that. So there's that, right? There's that potential to happen if one's skipping breakfast, just that uh, unintentional or intentional overcompensation that I don't think is necessarily the best route that people might be going,
Mhm.
choosing to do. But the other thing that could be happening, and this is just from a nutritional standpoint, is when you take away a meal, regardless of what it is, but it often typically is breakfast. When you take away a meal, you just take away a great opportunity to get in some more nutrition, right? And so what I often see happening is not only are people trying to compensate throughout the rest of the day, one, they're not usually feeling that great by doing that. And again, I don't think there's that much absorption happening as it should be. But two, they're just not getting in. They can't make up for missing that whole meal, and they're not getting enough of X, Y, or Z nutrients,
Mhm.
because they just took away 4, 5, 600, 700 calories potentially, and they're they're just not going to get that in, and therefore you're just missing a really good opportunity to get in some really good quality nutrition. There's so much more beyond that. I've seen stuff on it helps to stabilize blood sugar throughout the day. And if you don't eat that meal, you kind of run the risk of some like metabolic stuff going on throughout the rest of the day. And if this is long term, then that just kind of spirals into other matters. So I mean, there's so many reasons there. There's mental health, psychological reasons for making sure to set yourself up for success in that first meal. Otherwise, people just kind of aren't feeling too great mentally throughout the rest of the day, or because their blood sugar dropped because they missed the meal. Their body's going for things are going to bring up that blood sugar pretty quickly. So they're grabbing the donut as soon as they get to the break room at work because they skipped breakfast at home. That those foods, or they're going for coffee, extra coffee in the afternoon because their body's just so tired. You know, these things happen all the time. And when you kind of sit back and you look at why, and this is happening even if you do eat breakfast, right? But the question there is like, well, then what are you eating? Like maybe you have to change up what you're eating at breakfast time. But we often see this is like if you're skipping that meal, or if you're already going for kind of sugary breakfast as it is, or you're just having a bagel, for example, and there's no other kind of substance there, then you're going to have that low blood sugar crash by 9, 10, 11 a.m. and you're going to go for the sugary stuff or the quick carb stuff or the extra coffee intake or something like that. So for all those reasons, breakfast is important in the fact that it can be really helpful for people to set themselves up for success throughout the day and just throughout the whole picture of their nutritional intake.
Yeah. What's a healthy breakfast?
Yeah, what's a healthy breakfast? I will say that a healthy breakfast is a balanced breakfast, right? And I say that on purpose. And I don't know if that sounds super cliche or like I took it out of a fortune cooker or something, but I say that because I work with a lot of people who are from different regions, from different parts of the world. Like I mentioned, some international clients and stuff. And you talk to runners and you're like, oh, so oatmeal and peanut butter and a banana. Or okay, it's not that, so it's toast and peanut butter banana. It's like we have these like staples here, especially with runners, and I get that. And if those are healthy foods, so those count, right? But I rather answer it in that way. A healthy breakfast is a balanced breakfast because some people aren't eating that way. Some people don't want oatmeal, don't like oatmeal, or culturally don't eat oatmeal. Or they don't do nut butters, or they can't do peanut butter because of allergens or something like that. So I prefer to answer it in that way instead of giving specific foods, because I don't think it matters what kind of food you're eating, right? You can have, why can't you have your typical dinner meal at breakfast? Like we live in these boxes culturally, societally, but there's nothing wrong with having Asian stir fry at breakfast and having the oatmeal and peanut butter and a banana at dinner. Like
Sure.
it's the same nutrition. So there's really just nothing wrong with that. So instead, like I said, I like it just having it the focus be on a balanced breakfast. Make sure it's getting yourself some carbs in the beginning of the day to kind of start that system up. Make sure you're getting in some healthy fats in there. Avocado in there. I love the fact that avocado toast became so popular because you got the carbs from the toast, you got some really good healthy fats from the avocado. It like made avocado a bigger thing, and I love that because avocado is such a great food. And people were like doing it all up and putting on tomatoes and fresh onion slices and everything but the bagel seasoning and all these fun little things that people were doing. And then make sure you get protein, right, to sustain it, right, to sustain that energy, so that the carb, whatever carbs you're getting, don't cause that kind of low blood sugar. So you've got some protein in there and some make sure that carb is good, and supply some fiber to make sure that you can get to lunch, or you can get to at least 11 o'clock without necessarily needing anything, or at least not needing anything too badly. So yeah, make sure it's balanced, right? And I can get into examples. I intentionally refrain from it, but I will throw out some maybe not great examples, right? Bagel and cream cheese, as tasty as that might be, as like culturally American as that might be, not the best sustenance for that long term. Before a race, sure, you might go as basic as that or other options, but long term on your day-to-day stuff, add some substance there, right? Pop in the Eggos in the toaster, okay, but add something to it or completely change it, right? If you're someone, the classic like bread and butter toast in the morning, okay, not gonna shame you for that, not gonna shame you for anything, but add something to it, right? Add some sauteed greens on the side, or throw some avocado in there, like do something, add something to it that can just give you a little bit more. And that's all I like to take kind of in the beginning, those baby steps with people, just to kind of challenge them in these cool different ways. And they often, find that it's fun because they're getting in different foods and it's really manageable. And they're feeling better for it. They're like, oh, I don't need that like third cup of coffee, or I don't need that snack at like an hour later because my meals are lasting longer. That increased satiation is so important. And I find that like these little nutritional changes really go a long way.
Yeah. So is that philosophy kind of a broad stroke for all the meals? Like make sure they're all somewhat balanced?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think so, right? I mean, are you going to be 100% successful at all of them? Maybe not, right? We're adults, we have families, we have work situations. A lot of us are working from home now where we might have more control over our diet, but I have plenty of people who I'm working with that are back in the office now. And they are kind of constrained. I actually have someone who is back in the office now, and because of COVID, actually the break rooms actually kind of shut down because of social distancing guidelines. And so what their job did, fortunately, it's pretty cool on the jobs on the employer side of things, is that they're like catering in lunch meals instead of in lieu of having that break room there. So but to that point, now that person has even less control over their foods, right? Like they have a menu to choose from, but it's all takeout, right? So there's something there. So as best you can, to answer your question, as best you can, yeah, make sure that these meals are balanced, because you're gonna make just better choices throughout the day. What I often find is that if you aren't having, and so many people are probably going to resonate with this because I see it so regularly. If you're not having, like, often lunch is super rushed, right? Like it's eaten while you're in the middle of work, or it's eaten right before a meeting, or it's eaten like in between, like something to do with the kids and like virtual learning. Like lunch tends to be a very rushed meal, or very like, I'm just going to eat whatever I can fit in kind of meal. Breakfast is probably second to that. Dinner tends to be the one where you can just sit down and kind of relax. But what I often find is like when lunch is, falls into that category, that when people get home, they're like often snacking kind of mindlessly, right? It's fine to snack, but they're snacking mindlessly while prepping for dinner. Like their body's hungry, their body like wants something, and they're just going for the quick stuff while they're prepping their more nourishing dinner meal that they can sit down and enjoy, which is great. But this is where you find people like snacking on the popcorn, or snacking on the chips and salsa, or just maybe it's chips and hummus, like fairly fine stuff. But it's like, why is your body doing that, right? Like what went on throughout the day that you're just like putting down like 2 bowls of chips and salsa before, as dinner is literally being prepared. And it's often you can rewind back and you're like, oh, like, yeah, my lunch isn't like the best it can be, or I'm just like breezing through lunch, like my mind isn't even like registering that I ate lunch. Like I'm getting my bloodstream knows, right? I can feel it, but like my mind body connection was somewhere lost in there, and it didn't really register that I ate a proper meal because like I was so distracted and doing other things. So yeah, I mean, I love going on tangents, so I probably just did that a little bit, but
no, this is perfect, man. I'm
I
already
hope that
learning
answers
lots
the
of stuff.
question.
This is great. This is great.
Cool.
How many meals a day is ideal? Again, there's people in different camps, 3 meals a day, 5 meals a day. It's better to graze throughout the day. Do you have any thoughts there?
Yeah, and I'd be naive to say that my response here is the end all be all, right? Like you said, there's so many people in different camps. How is my response going to be the answer? I will say the best approach for people is the one that gets them the nutrition that they need. Okay, so taking a very political answer there, or political, route, I say. But I do think that there's something to be said about not eating too close to each other's meal, or to the other meals throughout the day, right? So like giving your body the ability to actually digest what you had, right? And what kind of happens when you eat a meal, and there's all the physiological digestive activity going on internally to actually get that meal through the digestive system. That takes time, right? And often what people are doing is like they're eating that meal, and sometimes even a half hour later, they're throwing something else in. And then, maybe an hour later, they're throwing something else in, right? That grazing, sometimes it's a combination of like, okay, but I'm eating 3 meals, but you're also grazing kind of constantly. That is probably not the best picture for optimal digestion, because the body wants to just settle, focus on that first meal, but now you introduce something else and now it has to like redo the process, yet there's still digestive processes happening in that meal. It didn't fully digest yet. So give it some time, right? Which is why usually in people who are in that camp are usually saying like wait 3 to 4 to 5 hours between like bigger meals. And hopefully they're big enough and fulfilling enough where you don't need as much of a snack, or as large of the snacks in between. Now, on the other camp, you've got the people saying, well, if you're going to graze, small grazing throughout the day, right? Because there's less for the body to digest at any given time. And maybe you're going to keep the blood sugar kind of stable throughout the day because you're snacking and there's no real time for the drops and the spikes if you're doing it in the appropriate way. You have so much valid reasoning and potentially science that backs up both ways. And so it's like, how do we settle on this answer? It's like the same thing with like, are eggs bad or good? Where are we at? Is coffee bad or good? I often, and this is why it's so nice working with a nutritionist, and that's just a shameless plug here, is because what matters is individualizing it, figuring out what is going to be the thing, the approach that the person in front of you, or, if you're asking yourself this, what am I going to respond best to, right? I've been grazing my whole life and my health isn't where I want it to be, or my health has been declining, or my performance has been declining. Okay, maybe we need to switch that off, right? Maybe we need to get you away from grazing throughout the day and having proper meals. Or on the flip side, I've been doing the 3 meals a day thing and I'm tired all the time, or I'm having GI issues, or just again not my best health and wellness type of self. Okay, what's going on in those meals? Maybe we do need to introduce a couple snacks throughout the day because you're just not getting enough, right? It's like, this is where I ask those questions, and this is where I work with that person in front of me to figure out the approach that works for them, because I don't think that there's one answer necessarily for everyone, right? Everyone's bodies is going to, one is already under different types of stress just with life happening. And everyone's eating differently and everyone's active in a different way. And that matters, right? That actually influences how the body's responding to food and how it's digesting food. Everyone's internal physiology is different, right? Some people have more hydrochloric acid than others. Some people are on medications, and that really kind of changes things up, if you will. There's so many things to consider, and it's like, there's not this one, increasingly over the years, over the decades, there's increasingly not one solution for everyone. But it takes, some investigative work and some guidance to figure out, what's going to work for you. And that's where kind of working with someone, or at the very least, even if you're not there yet, just paying attention to your nutrition and how you eat. Again, the key thing is actually paying attention and kind of thinking about things a little bit slower. That can just be really helpful.
Yeah. That's what I appreciate about your style, is you're open-minded enough to say my answer isn't necessarily the end all be all, and it is a little bit different for everybody. And, I appreciate that you sit down with your clients and it sounds like you ask a lot of questions,
Yep.
I only imagine like a nutritionist working with a client, like, okay, what did you eat today? Okay. What time did you eat it? How did you feel? I just imagine the questions being endless. What was I going to ask you? How many meals a day? Oh, I asked you that. Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Oh, no worries.
Eating before a run.
Yeah.
So say I get up and run first thing in the morning. Should I eat before that run, like pre-workout, post-workout meals? What does that look like in an ideal world?
Yeah, totally. And I've done personally both ways, right? I've gone the route of making sure I fuel before my runs, I've gone the route of running fasted, like intentionally running fasted and actually building my fat adaptation. And, I remember going through that process. I started off running maybe like 2 to 3, maybe 4 miles, eating fasted, or sorry, running fasted. So not eating anything before my runs in the morning. And built that up intentionally, gradually, where that was probably, I lived there for like a couple weeks, and then I could do like 5 to 7 miles, did that for a couple weeks. And I got to the point where I could throw down 20 miles without having eaten anything. I get my water and electrolytes in, but no real sustenance before or even during. It took time to get there. And a lot of people are in that camp, and a lot of people are really interested in that route. And I do think that there's a lot of science behind, the fact that, think about it, we have, maybe a lot of people don't know this, but we have like somewhere like 50 to 60,000 calories worth of fat in our body. And for glucose or glycogen, we have like 1,800 to like 2,500 worth of calories. That's like readily available. It's like we have so much potential to use fat as energy, but the body's set up to quickly use and to initially go to carbs. It's just an easier system, but we can train the body, we can kind of retrain the body, if you will, to use fat better. And so both are valid, right? Like eating before your runs, or going or doing it fasted, and not eating and waiting till you just get back from your run. It's just a matter of setting yourself up for success if you decide to go that route, because I do think that there needs to be a gradual approach. You don't want to rush that process, because if the system isn't ready for it, if you're not adapted enough, you will bonk very quickly, especially if you're doing like quicker paced stuff. So all that needs to be taken into consideration. There is some research out there, though, that women athletes do physiologically better and hormonally better if they aren't running fasted. So if they are eating before, right? So it's not like that's the end all right now, but there is some stuff out there that's pretty good research that kind of shows that women athletes should be pre-fueling before their runs or workouts or what have you, and maybe not going the fasted route, or if they are, not having it be for like prolonged efforts, right? Like maybe 30-minute runs or 45-minute runs, maybe an hour run if you're a pretty fit person. You can probably get away with that, but your long runs, or your adventures out on the trails or the mountains or something, pre-fueling, especially for women, tends to be is looking to be pretty important thing for them to do. But and then the other thing is, some of this depends on how that individual is responding, right? So, for example, if you're not doing well on your runs and you're running fasted, maybe your physiology isn't set up for that, right? Maybe you actually do need to pre-fuel a little bit. And there are plenty of people who have nausea issues when they're running, or GI issues when they're running. And so I ask those questions, to kind of see, like, okay, what are you eating? Are you eating? And if you're not eating, let's try eating, and let's see how your body kind of responds to whichever kind of solution we're testing out. So again, back to the whole, like, I ask questions and we try things out. Nutrition coaching is a lot of kind of experimenting and just seeing what fits that person. But so I think both can work, right? Both options that you mentioned can work. It's just a matter of, well, one, are you a female athlete versus a male athlete? And then two, kind of like what your history is with running fasted. Are you ready for that? And then three, the other thing is, timing, right? Like do you actually have time after to get in the sustenance you need to efficiently and sufficiently replenish and refuel post workout if you didn't eat before, right? Like if you didn't eat before and you are rushing, you get home from your training session, you go shower, and you go, you're off to work, whether that's in your office space at home, or you're literally leaving and heading to the office, then you need to eat before, right? Like if you have no time to refuel and replenish and re-nourish your body afterwards, then you need to be getting ahead of that. If you have that time, great. Maybe we can explore not running or not eating before your run. So a lot of things need to be there and kind of in place to best support the person. But you know, like you said, they're two different camps there for a reason. Both can work. It's just a matter of the person and the kind of activity you're doing.
Yeah. Yeah. If you're trying to utilize your fat sources for, say, an ultra run, I think most of the people listening to this podcast are probably ultra runners, mountain runners. I'm guessing you would probably do most of your training runs either fasted or eating very little out there, I would guess. But then come race day, it's kind of like all bets are off. People are eating gels. People are eating sugary things off of aid station tables, fruit. Do you have any opinions there? Like, what does that look? What should that look like?
Yeah, I definitely have opinions. I was in that boat. You know, I didn't get into it, but I will now. And that's actually what started me into, you know, learning about how to adapt to using fat as fuel and to get better and practice, you know, running with shorter runs and getting to 20 miles. Was an ultra running experience where I did a race and I wasn't exploring, you know, not eating or not running fasted beforehand, but I, you know, reflected on my run, on the race, and you know, realized I put down, I can't tell you the number now, but it was just an insane amount of gels, and you know, so many potato chips and Twizzlers and just all this stuff, all this obviously sugar, high carb stuff. And I felt violently ill at the end of the race. I mean, I was doing a lot of violent actions afterwards, just kind of getting rid of everything and just really didn't feel well. I was sweating, like not from being hot, like my body just was reacting, and it was really intense. I think I might have passed out for like 4 or 5 seconds on the car ride home. No, I wasn't driving. But yeah, and it led me to think like, because you know, my wife and I were talking about this. She was the one driving, and you know, we were reflecting on when I got home, or maybe that next day or something like that. And I was like, yeah, you know, it has to be like what I ate. Like, of course, I did an ultra endurance event, and so there's something there, but not everyone's having that kind of experience after. So what happened during that? And I that wasn't my first ultra, and all the other ones before that, I never experienced that. So did some reflecting. I was like, yeah, just that was the most sugary fuel I've had in that span of time ever. And I was like, there's got to be another way to do this. And so it led me to do that research. And you know, that's where it came, like I said before, it came to you know, learning how to use fat as fuel. And I think to your question, you know, that is to be considered, right? If you're already doing that and then you get to the race and you know, you have all these options at the aid station and you think you need them. The thing is, you're practicing using fat as fuel to hopefully allow you to do better without so much fuel during a race.
Yes.
Now, granted, you might be running faster than you're running on your you know, practice long runs, for example. So there's something to do about the pace, and maybe you will need fuel sooner. But hopefully, if you did things right, you can kind of prolong that fuel and maybe not need as much carbohydrate fuel. The other thing people do when they're really into that state is they actually fuel with fat and a little bit of carbs. So they're going, for example, like, you know, trail butter became so popular, I think, because it's just such a good, slow burning kind of fuel. And a lot of these companies that sell gels are also developing products that are slow burning versus fast burning. And those are higher in fat. They supply carbs, but they're lower in carbs, higher in fat, versus the opposite, which is basically your sugar gels that virtually have no fat and are just sugar. So you can go that route with your actual nutrition. You know, you have to be a little bit strict with yourself at the aid station when all the colorful gummy bears and Skittles and M&Ms are staring at you. But you can totally fuel with fat. You know, you can go for, you know, like the avocado and like half a brown rice cake, or avocado in a tortilla wrap, or you know, the trail butter like I mentioned, or trail mix. You know, you can still use fat as like a really good way to fuel. And the people who are going to respond better to that are the people who are practicing it, versus the people who in their practice and their training, they fueled every hour with a gel. Well, come race day, you're going to need sugar every 45 minutes to hour, because that's how you trained your body, especially in a race day scenario. When you're running faster, your body's just going to respond better to that sugar. And if you attempt to fuel it with fat instead, you could potentially get this nausea, because your body's not used to processing fat, which is denser, in that kind of state. It's used to processing very easy, light sugar. So there's something to be said about, if you're having issues on your racing, you're having these experiences, we'll see what you're practicing with, and what you're doing on the day-to-day in your training, because that stuff, you're essentially training your physiology to handle things, and that should be done or carried out on race day. And so a lot of people who are having these kind of issues with electrolytes or with with fueling with fat or fueling with carbs during a race, like, well, we have to kind of go back to the drawing board and start from square one in the beginning of that training block, and set the body up for success, so that come key event day, your body's ready. Your body knows how to process this stuff, and we can kind of steer away from the stuff we didn't work with. So, get away from the gummy bears and the other things like that, and just kind of focus on what we know works.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I made that mistake as well. Back in the day, I was doing triathlons and Ironman events, and all the people that I knew and looked up to were telling me, set your watch for every 20 minutes, and you need to be taking a gel every 20 minutes. And I'm like, okay. And these people are successful, so I'll listen to them. And I made it through the race, but I was throwing up all over the place. So you just kind of slowly learn as you go. What do you say to the athlete that has a bad diet, but they're successful in races? They're eating pizza, drinking half a dozen beers at night, but they're out there killing ultra marathons. I mean, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, totally. So I've been in a number of these situations, and there are a couple of things there. One, if they're coming to me of their own volition, what I say is, you're coming to me for some reason, right? So something's not right. You intuitively know we can address something through nutrition. So you're kind of like finding an escape route, even though you came to me. But in other occasions where someone's just popping in, or I'm talking to a coach, and then that gets me to talk to an athlete, and then I look at their diet, and I see a lot of this. It's like, man, how are you doing what you're doing, eating like this? My response to that is often, imagine what you could be doing if you were eating better.
Yeah.
Right. That is like it right there. It's like, if your body is able to do this based on what you're eating, there's clearly some like amazing genetic potential, amazing, just like raw talent that like is just in you, which is incredible. But then there's this other like, part of like nurture, where it's like, imagine if we, because you're not doing that now, imagine if we elevated the nurture aspect through this optimal nutrition for you, and got rid of the excess alcohol at night, and the pizza, and not to say pizza is bad, but like when we're talking, because I've seen it, like pies of pizza throughout the week, just people, it's like, well, it's carbs. If we really just kind of clean up that nutrition and really optimize it, imagine what that body can do running on that kind of clean fuel. So that's usually my response. It's like, I know you're incredible, and you're top, you're feeling like you're top of the world, and maybe they're a top athlete. I'm working with a number of really incredible athletes. And that's what I tell them. It's like, let's just see what we can achieve if we make these little adjustments, because intuitively, I really think and believe that your body's going to respond really better to the cleaner fuel. It's just how it is. I see it time and time again. It makes sense. You put clean fuel in a great vehicle, it's going to run better. And so that's what we're doing with these people who might not be, either they might not be eating well, they didn't pay too much attention, but they're getting by. Well, it's like, well, let's not have you get by. Let's make those 1 to 2 to 3% gains, and that can kind of go a long way for some people.
Is that an incremental change, or is that something you just change right across the board right away?
It depends on the person. It depends on the person. A lot of people do respond better to more incremental kind of gradual changes, and they're more manageable. They're less overwhelming. They can focus on like a few things per week or per every 2 weeks, and really kind of hone in on them and like really create like quicker, behavioral changes around it. And then, okay, now they're ready for something else. So I tend to go that route. Some people, they're ready, they're just, they're ready for more. They're ready to kind of start at a quicker pace, from the get go. And I'll respond to that. I might back them off of that urgency a little bit, because I don't think it necessarily gets to the, one, I don't think any of this should be rushed. I don't think it needs to be rushed. But two, I've just learned that people do better when they're not necessarily full throttle in this kind of nutritional work, because it is somewhat psychological and behavioral. I mean, that's what food is. There's a lot of that in it. But yeah, like I said, it depends on the person and kind of what their personality is. I've seen people who are just ready to go, all fires blazing right off the bat, and I can meet those people kind of where they are. Like I said, I'll back them off the urgency a bit. But generally speaking, I like the I don't want to say slower approach, and I just find a lot of success going that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there might be some accidents on the trail if you change that diet too quick.
Yeah, and a lot of what I do, I'll say this up front, is that I tend to up people's fiber pretty quick. Not pretty quick in the sense of like within the first week or anything, but that's like something I focus on when I'm doing like dietary analyses or looking at people's food intake, is I'm looking at their fiber content, and there's a really, really good reason for that. And I'll look at their fiber intake, and that's something that if it's not where I like it to be generally, or where I want it to be eventually, I will have a lot of my recommendations be around like slowly working their fiber up, because that is one thing you mentioned, issues on the trail. That is one thing where if you go full throttle up your fiber, from 20 grams on average to 50 grams on average, your body's going to rebel. Your body's not going to love it. You're going to hate me because you're going to think I just killed your intestines. Yeah, it's not a healthy or happy place to be. So that's like one really, really clear example of like why you want to make sure that you go slow on that, on kind of like upping the fiber intake there. And I'm dangling that carrot on purpose because I want people to kind of be intrigued and reach out or do their own research. But fiber is just really critical for a healthy body, a sound body, a high performing body. And there's a lot of reason behind why that is, but yeah, it's a big one.
How do we know if we're getting enough fiber? And I'm guessing most of that's coming from plants rather than supplements, right?
Yeah, I mean, most supplements aren't going to have fiber in them. Of course, you can buy fiber supplements, but that's not what I get people to do. I get them to get it from Whole Foods, because they're getting a plethora of other nutrients in there too. So yeah, it's plant foods, right? So eat more whole foods, eat less processed foods, eat more colorful foods instead of just white and beige foods, which is in a lot of our diet. And you'll get that fiber up for sure. It's not for most people a very hard thing to do. It just sometimes takes some work, which is why people hire nutritionists. It's just one of those things. But yeah, like I said, it's really important. It's really helpful for it's very disease protective. It's very anti-inflammatory in nature when fiber's a certain point. And it's I'll say this: when you up your fiber, and you do it not through a supplement, you are simultaneously increasing whole foods, right? So by just focusing on fiber and getting it to whatever the increased amount is, there's only one way to do it, which is to eat more whole plant foods. Mm-hmm. So, people are like, well, what should my carbs be? Or what should my protein be? Or what should my calories be? What I often tell people is like, if you're going to focus on a number that, hyper-focused way, focus on fiber. Mm-hmm. Because by doing that, you're going to be eating so much more good stuff, and you're going to feel so much better for it. And you're going to have so much less room for all the other stuff, because fiber fills you. like literally kind of makes no more room for a lot of this other stuff. Like you just don't want it anymore. And so, yeah, people, do pretty nicely when their fiber intake is higher. Not that that's like the only solution out there that, we do that and then I call it quits and they're off, they're off on their own.
Right.
But that is one of my goals kind of early on with people is like, hey, let's get your fiber up for X, Y, Z, and every other letter reasons, because there's so many reasons out there.
Yeah. As a nutritionist, are you working with people to try and get them to a certain point where they have this knowledge and they're just on the right path, and then you can kind of set them off on their own? Or are you trying to find clients that you're working with for a certain number of years, or what does that look like on your end?
Yeah, totally. I'm open to having those kind of clients who are wanting to work with me long term and just having me be part of their life, kind of like their their primary care physician is, or something like that. Like I'm happy to be that person for them. Generally speaking, though, it is more of a anywhere from 3 to 6 months for people where they really feel like, yeah, I've like totally come like full circle on my nutrition, totally feeling the effects of like really good long-term work, really good nutritional changes that have like kind of stuck, and they feel like they become like, second nature, and they've developed new habits around it. That tends to happen, like I said, somewhere between 3 to 6 months for people. Of course, that depends on the person and how consistent they were throughout that process. But I have plenty of people who I've been working with for, a year, over a year. Those people tend to be athletes who are racing, throughout or just performing. Not all of them are runners, throughout the year, and they just want different kind of support throughout their training blocks throughout the year, and they just like having nutritionists as part of their kind of care team, just like one would like a massage therapist or physical therapist or something like that. So I'm just seeing as someone like that, that's just like, yeah, you're my person for as long as I'm kind of doing this and striving for more, which is awesome. I love that, and I love being that serving in that role for people. But yeah, for the day-to-day person, it's somewhere in that 3 to 6 months you could expect for the results to really kick in. And what I often talk about with clients is, we can come back, right? Like after 3 months, 4 months, 5 months, 6 months, let's reconnect in 3 months, and do a check-in and see where things are at. Let's reconnect in 6 months, or let's reconnect in the fall when you've got, you're 2 months out from your 50 or your 100 or something like that. Let's kind of dial things in, or let's just, see where you're at. And then maybe we need to tweak a couple of things and final preparation for your big day. And we'll do that. I've done that with, many clients throughout the years. It's like, we set the solid foundation in their nutrition, and then they're off, and then we check in kind of at key moments throughout the year. Typically, because, again, I'm working with athletes, it's typically in like the 2 months heading into a key race, whether that's a marathon or, like I said, some kind of ultra running event or something. And then we'll just take that time to fine tune things and get them really dialed in for their big race. And then, they're off again, and maybe we'll reconnect at some point in the future. So yeah, I like to, that's generally the approach with people.
Cool. I like it. So you're not like that chiropractor that says you have to come back every week for the rest of your life.
No, I'm not. No, not throwing shade on any chiropractors, but that is not me. While I'm with someone, if they committed to 3 months or 6 months or whatever it is, I expect them to put in the work. That's the other thing is, they are with me essentially week to week. We're doing that work. But no, this isn't the thing where like once you signed up, you're a lifer, and that's it, or else that I don't take that approach. I don't think that that's necessary in our work.
For sure. So I'm a running coach, and one of the things I struggle with is when I'm working with a client and they're not following things to a T, or not following things hardly at all. How do you approach that when your client, you kind of set your client on the right path, but they're eating a lot of cheat foods or a lot of sugary foods, or they just can't quite stick to it like you wish they would?
Yeah. So that compliance, right? How do you how do you increase compliance? Here's what I found over the years that really helps with that. And I'm speaking from a nutritional lens here, right? So you mentioned running. I think compliance is part of any coaching relationship, but this is how I do it via our nutrition work. Is well, one, make sure that I really understand their goals, make sure that they know that I'm understanding their goals, and we're on the really on the same page very early on. I'm their person. I make that very, very clear. But what I'm doing in kind of like the first, really like the first week, but probably even like for the first few weeks, is really setting. I'm setting them up for success, right? Like I know, from a nutritional perspective, where I want them to be, right? In 3 months, or even by the end of the month. Some clients sign up for a month just to kind of feel things out. I know where I want them to be by the time that their plan ends, irregardless of if they're going to extend or not. But I'm not going to do that overnight, right? Just like you're not going to get them ready for their 100 overnight. You're going to take an approach. You're going to take develop a plan with them. So in the first few weeks, though, or in the first couple of weeks, I'm making sure that the recommendations I'm making, that what I'm advising them to do, they can achieve. Like I see it. I've seen it in our conversation. I see it in their current dietary intake that I've analyzed at that point. And I know I'm 99% sure that they can achieve these goals in the first few weeks. And at the same time, I know that they're going to feel really good doing it, right? They're going to feel really proud of themselves because they ticked off all the boxes. So they know they've made these achievements on a weekly basis. They're going to feel really good from a health and wellness standpoint because they're increasing nourishing foods and healthy foods throughout their week. And even potentially from their running, and or whatever their training is, they're going to feel really good. Maybe not in the first week. It takes some time, but maybe by week 2, week 3, they're starting to notice, yeah, I do feel a little bit lighter, or yeah, that pace was easier to hit this week, or yeah, I recovered a little bit faster from that hill workout or from that trail run. And I'm again making sure that in that first 3 weeks I'm capitalizing it, because you're right, that sets it up. That if they're feeling good, if they are trying to achieve these like mini goals that are realistic and achievable for them, compliance is way high. If I'm already setting them up for failure, I'm pushing them way too hard, way too fast, either of those or both of those, or I'm pushing them out of their comfort zone, like way too out of their comfort zone. Then their compliance is going to be down, because they're probably not going to be achieving those goals. They're going to feel really down on themselves. They're not going to know how to get those foods in. Yeah, that's really it, is really taking that kind of slower approach, setting them up for success. And then by the end of that time, 2-3 weeks later, they're ready for more. They're feeling good. They're like, wow, there's something to this. Let's get after it even more.
Mm-hmm.
And I often see it, after a month, they're like, I'm ready. Let's keep going. How do I sign up for another month or 2 or 3 or what have you? And that's just a testament to how good people feel when they're set up for success. I think that's the key to any kind of coaching client relationship, is making sure that we're always doing that for our clients.
Yep. Do you what about supplements? Do you advise people to take supplements? I know it's generally like kind of a backup plan if you're not getting the right foods. In an ideal world, everyone's eating whole foods and they're getting their nutrition through whole foods, plants. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, totally. No, I bring in supplements. Yeah, I bring in, I do it strategically, right? I bring in, and I mean that in 2 ways. I bring in good, high quality supplements. So when I say, hey, looks like you need some B vitamins or some vitamin D or some iron, it's not just now letting them go and get it
Right.
wherever they're going to get
That's
it.
really important.
I say, and I will send you some links, and I will send you, because I have access to databases and things, and I will send you an order for this. versus they're going to run to, you name the grocery store or the pharmacy, and getting the cheapest thing on the aisle or on the shelf. I've seen that way too often. I'm like,
Yep.
there's nothing in this, or there's a reason you haven't felt better and you've been doing this for years. So yeah, I bring in high quality ones, and like I said, I bring it in strategically. I'm not a huge fan of multivitamins. I think if people are taking them, I don't say don't. I just rarely encourage it for people, just because I like to be more specific with my supplements. I like to assess on a regular basis and see how people are handling their training, or how they're sleeping, or I'm assessing for different indicators of inflammation throughout the training block, for example. Or if it's a health condition, I'm assessing in a different way for certain health markers. And then I'm basing my supplement recommendations based on that. Like, oh, I really think you're going to respond better to this dosage of magnesium. Here's a really good quality one that I love. Look into it, or here's an order for it. I like it to be in that way because I want to address what's going on. I don't want to just blanket, hey, here's 5 supplements, take it because they're all good stuff, the body uses it. I don't, that's what the food is for. Let's go back to the basics there. The food does that. It's only when, we've upped our quality nutrition, and then life happens. You got an injury, you got to get ready for surgery, you're dealing with some GI stuff and you don't know why, or you're having sleep issues because you're super stressed at work. Okay, these are those moments where a supplement can be really helpful. We're far along enough in our civilization where we have these extra tools in the toolbox. Let's use them, but just let's use them smartly. And let's use, like I said, high quality ones that are well sourced, third party verified and tested. Especially with my athletes, make sure they're safe, they're getting tested and things like that. Make sure that there's no cross contaminations and things like that. So yeah, I'm pretty, like I said, picky, I will say, about supplements, but I don't shun them at all. I use them myself. I use them with most clients, I'll say that at some point. Just pretty, like I said, smart about how I do it.
Yeah. You've got some pretty high-end clients, I've noticed, and it seems like you're kind of in that running niche. Are a lot of your clients runners?
Yeah. Within athletes, most of them are runners. And I say most because I as it implies, I work with people who aren't runners, and I value them just the same. I love working with them just the same. Sure. But I'm a runner. I'm a runner. I love running the roads. I love running fast. I love running on the track. That's my background. Sprinter in high school, and I got into endurance running in college, and that's kind of taken me under its wing since then. And I love ultra running and I love trail running. So I highly identify as a runner, and I just kind of naturally gravitate towards the sport and towards that world and that community, which is an amazing community. And so yeah, just within athletes, which I also identify with. Runners, just, I get them. I know how they work. I know how their brain ticks. I know we love striving to be better, and we love our sport, and we love what it does for us. And I resonate with all of that. And so yeah, just it's fortunate. The journey has taken me to be able to work with some pretty amazing athletes and talented athletes. And what I find really cool about all of that is that they've gotten to the point where they know that nutrition matters, and they've brought me onto their team to support them, and I'm forever grateful for that. But what's really cool about that is it shows other people that even these top end people need to still work on their nutrition, and there's still room for improvement in their nutrition. And I think that's like the coolest part of it all. It's like, kind of like what you said about the person who eats like crap and yet still performs. That's not these people per se, but it's like, these are top end people. They probably only have room for like 1 to 3% more improvement in their performances, and they know that nutrition is going to take them that next level, whatever it is. And I love that message for sure.
Yeah. You're an ultra runner, and you've got some ultra running ambitions of your own coming up, don't you?
Yeah. I'm still kind of shopping around for a 50 in the spring, or 100K. We'll see. Although it looks like potentially maybe a earlier midsummer 100. And then I've got the one that I've actually selected is the Run Rabbit Run 50 in September.
Nice.
So I'll be there then. I wanted to run 100 in September, and just timing wise this year, it's looking like the early summer might be better. So I went ahead and did the sign up for the 50. I've been wanting to run Run Rabbit Run, Steamboat Springs for quite some time. So decided, yeah, this is going to be the year to do it. Pretty excited for it too.
Why not do the Run Rabbit Run 100?
It was sold out.
Oh, gotcha. Okay. That sells out quick.
I wanted to do it. I wanted that to be my 100, the 100 that I wanted to do in the fall. I thought that was going to be it. And then I don't even know when it sold out, but I was busy around the holiday season, and I went home to New Jersey, and it was kind of like off the radar and off the electronics for quite some time there. And like when I kind of got my bearings back and looked up some stuff, the 100 was sold out, and the 50 actually only had 6 spots left. And I jumped on it. I was like, oh man, I feel like there were probably 6 people looking at their computer right now who are going to sign up. So I saw that, and I just decided to sign up right away because I was afraid it was going to sell out, and I really wanted to run it this year. So I'm doing the 50. I'm happy with it. What I think happened was because it was canceled last year, so a lot of these races were almost automatically filled pretty much as soon as registration opened. Yep. Because all the runners in 2020 getting bumped to the 2021 race. So that's the case, and it's fine. There are more years ahead, but looking forward to some pretty good ultra running. And actually this year I'm looking to potentially do my first, or maybe even first couple fast packing experiences.
Oh, sweet.
It's been something that's been intriguing me over the last couple of years, and for whatever reason it didn't happen in 2020, but I'm slowly starting to accumulate some gear. I didn't realize it'd be so expensive, the fast packing gear that is out there, all the fancy lightweight stuff. So I'm getting some of that, and I think maybe sometime this fall, maybe October or something, after I recover from the 50, I'll venture out there for a fast packing experience somewhere in the Pacific Northwest or something like that.
Oh,
so
nice.
Yeah, I'm trying to get after it, and pretty excited about what's going to happen this year. Yeah.
That would be interesting to see what you're eating on a fast pack. You could probably write a book on that one.
To me too. That's going to be interesting. I'll put a lot of thought into that for sure. Yeah, maybe that's a fall podcast episode we can talk about.
No doubt.
How I ate during the fast packing trip. That'd be
great. What's your training like these days? Are you running quite a bit?
Yeah. I mean, enough sufficiently. And I apologize if you hear my dog in the background.
That's right.
I think it's dinner time for her. But I'm probably somewhere hovering around like 50, 60 miles a week.
Nice. Which
some might say is really high compared to theirs, and others might say is really low. I think for me, that's a good base mileage. And then I'll because I haven't signed up for a 50 or 100K yet for this late spring or sometime in the spring. I know once I'll do that and have that kind of be my goal, I'll ramp things up. Until I do that, I'll just kind of keep a good base. So I'll get after it. But yeah, keeping a good base and doing some kind of speed work at least once a week. And then once I get something on the calendar officially for this spring, I'll ramp things up and get to 70s being my solid kind of weekly mileage. Of course a recovery week every now and then kind of hit the 80s at some point. I don't tend to run anything above 85. I just don't really have time for that, to be honest.
Right.
And I've been just fine. I'm not trying to win these races. I'm rather trying to enjoy them. I find I don't need to hit anything above 85s. I won't even see too many of those weeks. I tend to live in the 70s. But I'll do a couple harder ones just for that kind of stimulus, if you will. And then I'll kind of come back to 70s and live there. Just all around better for my lifestyle, I think.
Totally. That's a good balance right there. Sounds like you're on it. It sounds like you're in a good place.
Yeah, like you said, you learn these things over the years. So.
Believe me, I've made every mistake possible. I've been around the sport for a good decade or so, and I've made every mistake possible. And it's a journey, man. It's all part of it.
Yep. Yeah, exactly.
Can you, before we get you out of here to go feed your dog, can you just give us like a broad stroke of like how people can eat healthier? Like what's kind of a general thing that everyone should do if they're trying to improve their nutrition, improve performance, or just live healthier?
Yeah, absolutely. So can I do this in like a three tips response? Is that cool?
Totally. Yeah. Yeah.
All right, great. So these are some three tips I often kind of leave people with here in these scenarios is, we talked about at least two of them. The first one, hydration. It goes so far, right? It's so important. It affects how you sleep. It affects how stable your blood sugar can be throughout the day. It affects your mood, right? When people are just chronically dehydrated, there's so much happening that they don't even realize, right? Because they're not thirsty. The body has been so used to that state of being that it no longer tells them that they're thirsty, even though they're in this chronically dehydrated state. And it's only when they get out of it and they start to properly hydrate themselves, that then their body like almost like kind of reawakens and like, oh, now it's thirsty again when it should be. And now it knows, when you're not getting enough, it tells you, you're thirsty. um I've just seen so many great quick kind of positive outcomes come out of someone properly hydrating
Mm.
themselves. And of course with athletes, it's key, right? To run your best self, you need to be properly hydrated. There's just no way around that. So that's tip number one. Tip number two, I mentioned fiber, right? I think that's just going to be like, I drive that home because it is so, it's such a easy in the sense of that it's not complicated to kind of wrap your head around or remember even. Such an easy way to make sure you're eating more healthier whole foods is just like, hey, work on your fiber intake, get it to around 40 to 50 grams. If you're above that, awesome, right? You're well above what most people are, which is, most studies are saying that people are just chronically, I want to say deficient because you can get by without it, but chronically below kind of like recommended values in this country. So yeah, can't speak enough about fiber. Third, colorful. Eat colorfully, right? People have probably heard at this point or read about it. Eat the rainbow, all that kind of stuff. Here's the thing: the only way to eat the rainbow, right? Like envision like your bowl or your plate. The only way for that to even look colorful is to go out to the store and buy colorful foods. It all starts at the grocery store or
Mhm.
the farmer's market or wherever you're doing your grocery shopping. If you're struggling with, oh, but I'm going after, I'm eating chips or I'm eating the sugars at night, and or I'm eating the same thing every day. Well, that's because that's what you're buying. That's just what it comes down to. You're buying the candies and you're stocking your pantry with it. You're buying the chips and salsa, and it's there. So it's just, that much easier for you to open the bag. Um, or you're not buying the super colorful, awesome, you know, well varied types of foods that you want to be eating, but for some reason they don't end up on your plate. You got to go and do the things, right? And again, it starts at the grocery store. And I know some people, I like to say I live in a Portland bubble where it's just like a food mecca here. We have an abundance of options. I get it. Not everyone probably has that kind of food access. Um, but I do think, people can challenge themselves to go to the produce section and, fill up their basket more with produce than they probably are currently doing. Or I'll sometimes just kind of simply challenge someone to get like one or two either colors or, other like healthy foods that you read about or that we're talking about that you haven't tried before. Do that for the next couple weeks. Like figure out how to work them into your routine or into your meals. Get out of your comfort zone a little bit. And again, that's the third tip because I think it's an important one. I think in order for your actual nutritional intake to look however you want it to look, however your person is telling you it should look, it starts with what you literally go and buy and bring home. Um, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
Those are the three big tips: the fiber, the optimizing how you're shopping, and hydration. I think if you're on the beginnings of this journey, that is a journey for a reason. It's a lifelong thing. Your body changes over the years. You're always learning. Hopefully, you're always changing and responding to how your body's changing. If you're in the beginning of that journey, I think those 3 tips will kind of carry you a pretty long way. And if you're, doing that work and you're realizing, man, I did not have those things dialed in, you're going to feel really good, after probably even just like a month or 2 of being pretty consistent with it. Like you're going to feel like a new person. I'm pretty confident in saying that.
Nice. You've given us a wealth of knowledge. I appreciate it, Will. This is awesome. Where can people find you?
Yeah, sure. So my business name is On Pace Wellness. Instagram is my primary social media place, which is just at On Pace Wellness. And then my main website is onpacewellness.com. So just keep it simple for people. That's where you can find me. All my contact info is on my Instagram or on my website, whether that's my number or message me or my email, somewhere around there. Pretty easy to get in contact with, and yeah, highly responsive to people who are working with me or who want to work with me. Always excited to have those conversations. Very happy to just have a preliminary call with people, just see if this is right for them, see if this is good timing, learn what they want to focus on, and see if we're a good fit, or if nutrition is probably something that can really help them with their goals. I love just talking about this stuff with people and just kind of being open and honest with them.
Yeah, I can tell you've got a passion for it, man. And it's all good stuff. And I'm happy to announce that On Pace Wellness and Big Things Crewing is sort of doing a little merge. And so if people hear this podcast, and you're going to be sponsoring future podcasts as well, you're going to be offering them a discount.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, people who are listening in and they mention, Do Big Things podcast or Big Things Crewing, then they can get a 10% discount for signing up with a plan with me or doing some kind of work with me, and we can kind of talk about that, them and I. But yeah, happy to kind of offer that, and excited about this partnership, Adam.
Yeah, me too, Will. Boom. There it is, guys. Look him up, reach out to him, get yourself on track. This is the guy to talk to. He's open-minded. There's not a blanket diet for everyone. It sounds like he's a question asker, and he'll get to the root of it. So this has been awesome, man. I've learned a lot, and I'm looking forward to chatting with you in the future, man. This has been great. I really appreciate it, Will.
Absolutely. Likewise, really excited to kind of join forces here, and absolutely open to scheduling another podcast and chatting with you and giving your viewers something to do and listen to while they're running, and hopefully get something out of it.
Yeah, I love it. 100%. There's more things coming for sure. So keep doing what you're doing, and we'll try and send some people your way. And yeah, I just really enjoyed this conversation, man. So definitely stay in touch, and be talking to you soon, Will.
Sounds great, Adam. Appreciate it. Appreciate the time. Excited about everything.
All right. Go get that dog fed, man.
All right. Will do.
All right.
Thanks,
have a good
everyone.
one. We'll see you.
Yep. You too.
All right.